Bonjour, salut, hello everybody, and welcome to this session on le jeu de rôle, so the role play question in the GCSE French oral examination. With me, Madame Williams. I am a teacher of 15 years experience teaching modern foreign languages or international languages at Ysgol Gyfun Gymraeg Bryntawe in Swansea. I would like to just go quickly through the other sessions which are available during this series with Carlam Cymru. So this session, like I said, is on the oral exam, specifically the role play question. There is also a session on recycling language with Madame Pritchard. She's also doing a session on giving opinions and using adjectives. And then I am doing a session on the sub-theme of enterprise employability and future plans. So just to go through the objectives for this session, I would like for you to familiarise yourself with the arrangement of this part of the oral examination, so the role play question. We're going to look closely at the mark scheme to find out exactly where you can gain marks, where you could lose marks, and what the examiner is looking at as they listen to your transcript or listen to your recording. We will revise how to ask a question, because that is something that will definitely be required of you in the role play. And also, I would hope that you would gain confidence in answering an unseen question, because again, that is something that is required in the role play question. So I'd like to also go through the summary of assessment just to make sure that you understand where exactly this question lies within the list of assessments that you will have. So we are looking at Unit 1, speaking or oral, which is split into 2 tiers, foundation and higher, and you will have a discussion with your teacher as to which tier you will be sitting in each of the 4 skills. So the second unit, Unit 2 is listening, third unit, Unit 3 is reading, and Unit 4 then is writing. So each of those are worth 25% each of your GCSE course. So the speaking examinations take place between the window of Monday the 8th of April and Friday the 10th of May next year, 2024. And if they haven't already done so, your teacher will let you know when exactly your exam will be. So the timings for the examination, the oral examination, depending on the tier that you sit, are on the screen now. So we look specifically, first of all, at the role play. It does say 2 minutes in this table from the WJC. To be honest, it very rarely takes 2 minutes. It could be quite a bit shorter than that. So don't worry too much if your role play is over in quite a short amount of time. That's not a problem, because as we will go through tonight, the role play does not require you to expand on your ideas at all. So it is generally quite a bit shorter than 2 minutes. In total, the foundation tier aims to be between 7 and 9 minutes in total, and the higher tier between 10 and 12 minutes in total. So in case you didn't know as well, there is an opportunity for you to prepare with the exam paper for 12 minutes before you go in to start your recording with your teacher. So in a separate room, you will be given the exam paper and some writing paper with a pen or pencil with no dictionary, and you will be allowed to make notes during that time, and you will be allowed to take those notes in with you to your exam as well. So instructions from the WJC specifically on the role play question. One thing I need to change in this paragraph is the first sentence. There will be a sentence at the beginning in English. Okay, so no, not in Welsh, in English in your paper. And the first sentence is explaining the situation of the role play. So what is the context? So it might say where you are, it'll tell you who you're speaking to, what role your teacher is taking. Don't worry too much about the details of that. The most important thing is that you look at the theme. So what is your role play focusing on? And you will need to read as well the part that tells you who will speak first. It's usually your teacher, but not always. So just make sure that you've read that part as well. There are always 5 bullet points in the role play, and you will need to respond in order to get full marks. For each part, you will need to respond with a full sentence each time. You will definitely as well have answer the question as one of your bullet points. So this is where your teacher will be asking you a question which you will not have had access to beforehand. You will not have read it, you will not have heard it. So this is your opportunity to show that you can answer a question spontaneously. But during your preparation time, those 12 minutes before the exam, try to think of the thing, or the kind of thing that might be asked of you within the context. So for example, if the context is that you are ringing a restaurant to reserve a table, well, think about the kind of questions that may be asked of you in that scenario. So it could be that your teacher is asking you how many people for, what time, what day or date. So just have a little bit of idea what kind of things could be asked of you. You will definitely also need to ask a question back to your teacher. We'll go through tonight how that could be done. There's several ways of asking a question. You could do it in quite a simple way. We'll go through that in more detail as the session progresses. In the foundation tier, one of the prompts, one of the bullet points will be in a different tense. So of course the present tense is the main tense of the question, but there will be one other tense in the foundation tier. It's usually the past, but you know, it could change. So listen out for prompts, for example, tomorrow or last year or last weekend. If you have that vocabulary to hand, then it'll make it easier for you to pinpoint which tense is needed from you as an answer. The higher tier, there will be, in addition to the present tense, there will be 2 prompts in different tenses. So it could be the past and the future, it could be the future and the conditional. So again, have that vocabulary to hand. Have you heard the words tomorrow or next week or in the future? And lastly, very, very important, unlike other parts of the speaking exam, so the speaking about the photograph and the conversation, you will not get extra marks in the role play for adding further details, for example, opinions. So in the role play, you only need to give the information the bullet point asks for and nothing else. If you try and elaborate on your answer, you may be deducting marks from the ones that you've already gained. So you may say something perfectly correct and gain your marks, and then you might add something that is not needed and you may very well lose marks. So just be careful that you don't say too much each time. Okay, so let's go through quickly then the mark schemes. So this is what the examiner will be looking at as they listen to your recording. So there are 15 marks available for the role play, 5 bullet points, and so there are 3 marks available for each answer. So for each response you give, you may be awarded 3 full marks, 2, 1, or 0, depending on the quality of your answer. So let's look at the top because we're always aiming for full marks, hopefully. So if to get the full marks, this is a foundation tier, then you need to convey the message so that the person who is listening understands what you're saying. The vocabulary and grammatical structures are mostly correct. Pronunciation and intonation are mostly accurate, but there may be occasional lapses. We're not looking for perfection, but the more mistakes you make, obviously, the more chance that you have of reducing your marks for each bullet point. In the higher tier, then, as you would expect, you need to be more precise in order to get your full 3 marks available, 15 marks in total. Listening to doubt that they've understood what you've said. The vocabulary and grammatical structures are correct. Consistently accurate pronunciation and intonation. So you need to be pretty much perfect in order to get your full marks. But remember, these are only very short sentences. Okay, let's go on. Shared by the WGCSE as examples to specific questions and the marks awarded then for each. So if we look at the foundation example first, so the question was, quelle est la date de ton anniversaire? So we're asking the date of your birthday. So let's look at the bottom here and work our way up. So if the answer would just be the word anniversaire, that is just repeating one of the words from the question, and so that's not really an answer, so that would be 0. If a word is given, so for example, septembre, well, at least that shows that you've understood the question and you've answered with some of the information that is required, so you'd get 1 for that. If you then add in a date with the month, 5 septembre, for example, then the marks would be 2 out of 3. And then for the full marks, then you would need to say everything in the septembre. Okay, so must have clear pronunciation with the complete information required. Okay, so for the higher tier, it's a different question. We have qu'est-ce que tu préfères manger à une fête? So what do you like to eat, or what is your favorite thing to eat at a party? Okay. So again, let's look from the bottom up. So again, just recycling one of the words from the question, just saying fête wouldn't be good enough to receive anything. If you give a one-word answer, which does show understanding of the question, for example, gâteau, with a reasonably correct pronunciation. For example, j'ai gâteau d'anniversaire. I can understand your answer. I know what you're trying to say, but the verb is incorrect and it's not really a full sentence, maybe 2 marks. And then in order to get the full marks, you would need to say something like j'adore, j'aime the food. So le gâteau d'anniversaire, for example, okay, with correct pronunciation and intonation. Okay. I'd like to just go over as well. There are other sessions which have been done in previous years, revising how to ask a question in French. So for that reason, I won't be spending that much time going over it in this session, because it's always something that you can go back and look at in a full 45-minute session if this is something that you need to practice more. But just in general, first way of asking a question is to use the intonation of, and I'll give examples in a minute. You could use a question word. So let's intonation of your voice. You are taking a statement and turning it just by raising your voice a question. So for example, on the left-hand side, we have tu as un animal. That is a fact. That is a statement. Mal, then it turns it into a question, and that's perfectly fine. That will give you 3 marks, full marks, for asking a question when that is required of you. A couple more examples. So tu aimes ton collège. That is a statement, it is a fact. To change it into a question, just change the tone of your voice towards the end. Tu aimes ton. And the last example, tu joues au foot. Changes to tu joues au foot. Very, very simple, but perfectly acceptable by the examiner. So remember, it is also possible to add est-ce que to the beginning of a statement to create a question. So you could say, est-ce que tu as un animal? Est-ce que tu joues au... It makes it even more clear rather than giving a statement. Okay, using inversion then, the second method of asking a question would be to change the position of the verb. So we have here, tu as un animal. You have an animal. In order to change that into a question, you swap the two words at the beginning in order to create. Tu as becomes as-tu. So you have becomes have you. Exactly the same in English. You have changes to have you. So as-tu un animal? I would still use the intonation at the end to raise my voice just to make it even clearer that I am asking a question. Same with this sentence, tu aimes ton collège. Change the first two words around, change the position of the verb. Aimes-tu ton collège? And the last example, tu joues au foot, changes to joues-tu au foot? Very, very simple. Using a question word then, these are some vocabulary that are so important in each and every one of your skills, really, in all of the examinations. For example, in the listening exam, and what is expected as an answer as well in that examination. So just very, very quickly, let's go through the most common question words that are used in French. So we have comment, which is how. Okay, now quite often people think that comment means what, because one of the first questions that you learn in French in year 7 maybe, or even earlier, would be comment tu t'appelles, or tu t'appelles comment. And people think that means what is your name, but it means how. Okay, so be careful with comment, how. Qui is who. Que is what. Sorry, that there the second time. Où is where. Quand is when. Depuis quand, since when. Combien is how much or how many. À quelle heure, at what time. Quel, depending on plural, feminine, as in the spelling, is which. Avec qui is with whom. And the last one, if I just move my window, pourquoi. Oops, sorry, just gone on, is why. Okay, so if those are words that you struggle to learn, then I would definitely suggest that you spend some time revising those. Definitely will be required in more than one of your skills. So when you're listening and watching this presentation, I suggest that you pause after I've explained this task, maybe pause and try and complete the exercise, and then you can replay in order to see whether you are correct. So in each of these 10 sentences, the question word has been removed. So if you can read the rest of the question and then try and add in the question word which makes sense. So if I go through one with you and then you can pause, and then I will go through the answers on the next screen. So the first one is something, vas-tu en Italie? So we need to think about what would finish that question. We're talking about going to Italy. We're talking about you going. So try and think about what would make sense in order to finish off that sentence or that question. So pause now, try and do the 10 and then replay to find out whether you were correct. Okay, so let's go through the answers. Number 1, comment. So comment vas-tu en Italie? So that's asking you which method of transport are you using to go on to Italy. So comment vas-tu en Italie? How are you traveling to Italy? Number 2, we're talking about where you live. So something, est-ce que tu habites? The only word that makes sense there is where. Où est-ce que tu habites? The third, something fais-tu pendant les vacances? So talking about activities which you do during the holidays. Que makes sense here. So what do you do during the holidays? Number 4, something, est-ce que tu arrives au collège. So we're talking about arriving at school. So quand makes sense here. So when do you arrive in school? At what time? The fifth one gives it away a little bit that there are two gaps, so you need two words here. So something joues-tu au rugby? Avec qui makes sense here. So with whom do you play rugby? Just move my window to the other side. Number 6, talking about drinking. So something tu bois. So qu'est-ce que tu bois? So what is it that you drink? Or what are you drinking? So qu'est-ce que tu bois? Number 7, quelle serait ton activité idéale? So we're talking here in the conditional tense. What would be your ideal activity? So quelle here is in the singular feminine form because of the word activity. Number 8, we're talking about cost because of the word coûte, la poire. So combien, whenever we're talking about cost, we usually ask how much or how many. But here it's talking about how much is the pair. Number 9, something commence les cours. À quelle heure makes sense here. At what time the lessons begin. And the last one, something détestes-tu les serpents? And pourquoi makes sense in order to finish the question and ask, why do you hate snakes? And there they are again. But this time I have translated, sorry, not translated, I have given answers that you could possibly give as well. So again, I suggest now that you pause the video, the recording, and as the example on the screen now shows, number 1, comment vas-tu en Italie was the question that we just created. So what I would like you to do now, after you pause, is to try and answer each of these questions and try and think, right, what would I say if my teacher asked me these questions? So if this is one of the spontaneous questions, would I understand the question and would I be able to answer spontaneously? It doesn't have to be true. You know, number 1 here gives the example, je vais en Italie en avion. So they say that they are flying to Italy. There's nothing wrong with you saying that you go by bus. Okay, that would not be incorrect. Okay, you can just make it up. That's not a problem. So try and do the rest now then in the same way. There are 5 on the screen. So if you could pause, write your answers, and then come back and see whether you're close to the answers that I have given, the examples that I have. Okay, I'll put the first 5 up then. So number 1 is up already. Je vais en Italie en avion. Number 2 is asking you, où est-ce que tu habites? So it's asking you to state where you live. The example that I've given, j'habite à Swansea. You could go on to say au Pays de Galles, of course, but you don't always have to expand your answers, remember, in the role play. Number 3, que fais-tu pendant les vacances? So you need to give an activity that you do during the holidays. The example I have, very simply, je fais les magasins. Okay, you could say where you go, you could maybe say what sport you might play, for example, as long as you have the verb and the sentence as a whole correct. Number 4, quand est-ce que tu arrives au collège? So when do you arrive at school? J'arrive au collège à 8h30, but obviously you could change the time to suit you. And number 5, avec qui? So with whom? Joues-tu au rugby? Do you play rugby? My answer, je joue au rugby avec mon équipe. So I play rugby with my team. Obviously, you could change that to with your brothers or with your friends or with your sisters, as long as it answers the question. Okay, the next 5. Again, if you could pause. And let's go through the answers that I gave as examples. So, qu'est-ce que tu bois? I have j'aime boire de l'eau. It's okay to give your opinion there that you like to drink water. That's absolutely fine. Number 7, quelle serait ton activité idéale? You could say J'aimerais faire du karaté. Obviously changing the activity as it suits. Number 8, combien coûte la poire? You need to give an amount, a cost. So la poire coûte 50 cents. Obviously you could change the amount. Number 9, à quelle heure commencent les cours? So again, you need to give a time here. So that's similar to question 4, really. Les cours commencent à 9 heures. And then number 10, pourquoi détestes-tu les serpents? As a full sentence, je déteste les serpents parce qu'ils sont effrayants, because they are frightening, they are scary. Okay, so that was just some practice on creating the questions first of all, and then trying spontaneously to think, how would I answer that question if it was spontaneously asked by my teacher? Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So what I'd like to do now is to show you what an actual GCSE French oral examination looks like, and again specifically the role play question. So this is how it will look on the first page. So you've got the cover page, and then as you turn to the first page, this is the type of question that you will see. So it says role play, it'll say the tier, so make sure that you check that you're doing the correct tier. Foundation I have on the left and the higher on the right. So these happen to be, the both of them are talking about identity and culture, and the theme as well is technology and social media. So it's quite interesting to see as well the difference between the foundation and the higher sets, to see how much more complicated the higher questions are compared to the foundation. So the setting, as I said at the very beginning, is in English. So you are Skyping your French friend and you start talking about how you use technology. Your teacher will play the part of your French friend and your teacher will speak first. So that's very, very similar in the foundation and in the higher, as you can see. So the foundation paper is asking you, first of all, to say what sort of technology you like. So do you like using a mobile phone? Do you like using a laptop? Do you like using an iPad, etc. Then it's asking you to say what your favorite website is. Okay, then it says answer the question, as we've heard is always asked of you. Then it's asking you to say what technology you used yesterday. So this is the prompt in the past tense, so different tense. And then the last bullet point in the foundation tier is to ask your friend if he or she has a mobile phone. On the right-hand side, let me just move my window again. Very, very similar, but I hope you can see the difference between each bullet point and how much more complicated the higher tier is compared to the foundation. So the top one in the higher, say why it is important to have a mobile phone. Then you say what technology you used last night. So you will hear your teacher ask you in the past tense. Okay, so and you'll have hier soir in that sentence. Again, then answer the question you won't have heard beforehand. Ask your friend what he or she thinks of social media. So if you look at the prompt on the left and the right there, asking you to ask a question, the foundation is more, do you have it? So that's a fact, asking your teacher to give you a fact, whereas in the higher, it's asking you to ask their opinion, which is a higher level language question. Okay, and then again in the higher, this is where you're using your third tense, that you will be buying a new phone tomorrow. So present, past and future there in the higher set. Okay, on the next screen, yeah, I've just circled the answer the question questions there. This is just to give you an idea, just I thought it might be useful for you to see what does the teacher see as they're asking you your questions. So on each side here, we have the teacher's copy of the foundation and on the right-hand side, the higher. So just so that you can see exactly what they have, their lines are in bold and your lines then are underneath. So for example, on the foundation, quelle sorte de technologie aimes-tu? But you already know what the question means because it's asking you to say what sort of technology you like. Okay, the important one to note here is the unseen question. So you have the prompt, answer the question. So now you can see exactly what that question is. I've highlighted it there in the red circle. So quand utilises-tu l'internet? So when do you use technology or the internet, sorry. Okay. On the right-hand side, in the higher, this is the unseen question. As you can see underneath it, it says answer the question. So you will be asked, combien de temps est-ce que tu passes sur ton portable? So how much time do you spend on your mobile phone? Okay, so you will not have seen that question beforehand. So again, that's the unseen question. So I do think it's quite useful for you to see exactly what the teacher is seeing during the exam. So taking the exam papers which I have just shared with you, I have put together some answers that you could have given and which would have gained you full marks for each. So what I suggest you do now, again, is to pause the video, pause the recording, go back a slide, look at the questions and try and think, right, how would I have answered those? What would I have said? Which verbs would I have used? How would I have created the past tense? How would I have created the future tense, for example? Okay, so I'll take each of the bullet points in its turn and I will give you the example given by the WJEC of what they would have accepted as a full mark answer. So the first question asked you, quelle sorte de technologie aimes-tu? So what sort of technology do you like? This is the example they give as a full mark answer. So, j'aime jouer sur l'ordinateur. So, I like to play on the computer. But it says accept any suitable response as long as it has a verb, giving your opinion, and an infinitive, and then obviously the type of technology afterwards. The second prompt asked you to answer the question, quel est ton site internet préféré? So, what is your favorite website? And again, this is an example answer from the WJC. So, je préfère, I prefer, and then anything. So you could say, je préfère YouTube. Je préfère Google. Okay, so any opinion, as long as it's positive, because it's asking you for your favorite. So you could say, j'adore. And then the name of the website. Third prompt asked you to just answer the question. So this is your unseen question. And as I've just gone through, quand was the question word. So when utilises-tu l'internet? So when do you use the internet? And this is an example of a good answer. So j'utilise, so using the present tense of the verb and an expression of time to finish your sentence. So this one says le soir, so in the evening. You could obviously say le weekend instead. The fourth prompt is the past tense prompt, asking you to say what type of technology you used yesterday. So the important word there was hier, yesterday. So you could begin your answer by saying hier, yesterday, and then create your past tense sentence. So this is an example. So it says j'ai lu, so I read un blog. So I read a blog. So you've got the perfect tense and then some kind of activity which you did yesterday or last night. Ah bon, that's what your teacher says back very, very easily. And the last prompt is asking you then to ask the question back. So ask your friend if he or she has a mobile phone. And as we looked at just now, more than one way to ask a question. The example that the WJC has given is as-tu, so it's using the inversion method. As-tu, do you have un portable? But you could say it in one of the other ways that we looked at earlier. You could have said, tu as un portable? Or est-ce que tu as un portable? And they would have all been fine. Okay, so exactly the same thing now then for the higher tier. Let's take each bullet point in its turn. So again, if you're doing the higher tier, good idea maybe to pause the recording now, to go back, look at the questions and try and create your answers. What would you have said in response to the bullet points each time? So the first bullet point, if you remember, was to say what you think. Why is it important to have a mobile phone? The question is, que penses-tu des portables? So what do you think of mobile phones? So why is it important to have one? So this is an example. Je peux lire mes mails. So I can read my emails. So the reason is given in the present tense. Second prompt is asking you to say what type of technology you used last night. So the prompt there is hier soir, last night, and you're needing the perfect tense here in order to answer correctly. So qu'est-ce que tu as utilisé? What did you use? Comme technology. The example answer here, j'ai utilisé. And you must pronounce those words absolutely clearly. If you mumble through those verbs especially, you are very, very likely to lose marks. If you say je utilisé, for example, not correct, or any any sort of mistakes in that will not be counted, will not give you the full marks. So j'ai utilisé. I would really pronounce those as clearly as you can. Mon portable hier. Perfect tense. And then the hier or hier soir, I think personally would be even better to answer that. The third prompt, combien de temps est-ce que tu passes sur ton portable? So how much time do you spend on your mobile? So we have here the present tense, I spend environ 2 heures. So roughly 2 hours par jour, so a day, sur mon portable, on my mobile. Perfect answer there. Ah bon. So again, very, very short answer by your teacher. And then the last but one thing you need to do is to ask your question. So ask your friend what he or she thinks of social media. So you're asking their opinion. Remember, this is the higher tier. The questions, therefore, are a little bit more complex. This is an example of how to do it. Que penses-tu? What do you think? Des médias sociaux. So what do you think of social media? Question word and the inversion method is used there as well. And your last bullet point, c'est super. Que feras-tu demain? So this is your prompt for the future tense. Say you will buy a new mobile phone tomorrow. So again, that word demain, tomorrow, is prompting the future tense. And this is the way it's created in this example. J'irai acheter. So I will buy un nouveau portable demain. So again, showing that you can use the demain from the question at the end of your answer as well. Okay, so I hope it was useful to look really closely at the question in the exam paper, the teacher's copy, and also examples of how you could go about answering each of the bullet points in the foundation and higher tier papers. Remember as well, please don't be scared to ask your teacher to repeat a question. If you don't catch what they've said or you're not sure what is asked of you, then please just ask them to repeat, but do so in French. So you could ask them, pouvez-vous répéter s'il vous plaît? You will not lose marks for doing that, but please remember that your teacher in the role play will not be able to change any vocabulary or any structures in the question. They have to stick to their script, but they can repeat, okay? But they will not be able to ask it in a different way. So at the end of this presentation, I have collected together, I've tried to look at different themes, different sub-themes as well across each of these papers. So what I've done is to put some foundation and higher papers in here for you, just for you to practice. You can see again the layout of the question, but I have also put in for you the unseen question from the teacher's copy. So when you see answer the question as the prompt, I've put in for you what that unseen question would have been. So I've done that for each of these past papers. Okay, so that's from 2022. And I've tried to make sure that there is one for each of the themes as well. So again, answer the question, and I've put the unseen question there for you. And then the same for the higher. I've put in the unseen question for you. And take note as well that the answer the question bullet point isn't always in the same position. So it could be the second prompt on one, and it could be the fourth in another. So don't think that it's always a specific number as far as the bullet points go. That's not the case. Okay, so again, for the higher third theme, that's your unseen question as well. Okay, so just some top tips to share with you at the end of this session. Please remember not to say too much. You do not have to elaborate on the answer that you give. You give the answer to the question in a simple way, but please make sure that it's as correct as it can be. Make sure that you answer in a full sentence each time, especially make sure that your verb is conjugated correctly, depending on the tense that you're using, which is the next point. So make sure you use the correct tense and verb conjugation. You know now that you need to prepare to ask a question back to your teacher, and I've given you the different ways of doing that. Remember that there are sessions in previous years as well on specifically asking questions. So it would be a good idea to look at those if you haven't already done so. Prepare thoroughly for the unseen question. So practice the question words. Make sure you know what comment, quand, où, qui, avec qui, what all of those mean. And then finally, I have added in some links here to different websites, which will give you some more practice, opportunities to look at other ways of preparing for this question in the exam. So you have some vocabulary practice. BBC Bitesize, always a good website to look at as well. Quizlet, Memrise and Wordwall, all great places to help you to learn vocabulary. And just to remind you as well of this series list of sessions. So this session has been on role play. There's also recycling language and giving opinions and using adjectives with Madame Pritchard. And the last one with me, the sub-theme of enterprise, employability and future plans. So all I have left to do is to wish you bonne chance, good luck, restez calme, try and remain calm in your oral examination, always quite stressful, always quite nerve-wracking, but just think, just do your best, answer the question as fully and correctly as you can, and I'm sure you'll do as well as can possibly be expected. So bonne chance, good luck everybody. À bientôt.